By now, we've all seen these headlines. And to be fair, they really instill quite a bit of fear. But I'm going to share the 4 most compelling reasons why I don't believe the real estate market is going to crash. I am a numbers person, if you know anything about me, and so I decided to go back and really dig into the 2008 numbers in real estate, compare it to what's going on here, and really see if we're on the same trajectory for what happened in 2008. And I gotta say, I'm just not seeing it. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Alex Saldana, and if you're new to this channel, this is where I try to answer all the deep questions for homeowners, potential home buyers, real estate investors about all questions related real estate. So if you're new, consider subscribing. And stick through to the end because there's maybe one scenario where we do see some sort of big flop in the market. Reason number 1 why I don't think we're going to have a real estate market crash, and this is simply due to supply and demand. Now, I want to give you a little bit of context of where we were in 2008 versus where we are today. In 2008, we had approximately 4 million houses on the market, active for sale, before we started the crash. And today, in the beginning of 2023, we have approximately 1.3 million houses. I mean, that's 300% more houses available in 2008 when we really started the crash. It's pretty simple to see how prices started decelerating as rapidly as they did. Number 2, the subprime market and what it was prior to 2008. Now, most of us that have come to the age of buying a house in the last 14 years don't really know what subprime loans might be. The government had programs in place that allowed people to get loans with $0 down, with subpar credit, and lenders got bonuses for making these loans. So really that enticed lenders to hand out these loans to people that maybe shouldn't have been buying. And there's a joke, if you've ever watched the movie The Big Short, which I would highly recommend watching, they had something called ninja loans, right? No income, no job, and no assets. And so what that meant was that home buyers had very little skin in the game. So as soon as things started to shift, there was no incentive to continue to hold onto the property and to pay for it. Not to mention it was much easier to get multiple houses under your name that you probably shouldn't have been buying in the first place. Then on top of that, you have all these mortgage-backed security swaps and all this crazy stuff going on with the big banks that heck, I don't even understand fully, and I am in this business. And it created this perfect storm of just a full collapse. And we were real close, folks, in 2008 to having a full financial collapse. But since then, we have tightened up lending requirements. I have been selling properties for 12 years, hundreds of homes bought and sold. I have never sold a property with a buyer that paid 0% down. And then not to mention, appraisers have had more regulations put on them as well to tighten up how they were appraising properties. So number 3, and this one is where I really dug into the numbers, but frankly, we're just not in the same situation. I went into 2008 and I looked at the total amount of debt for housing specifically, which was $10 trillion. Now, at that time, there were about 124 million U.S. households total. The average price at the very top of the market in 2007 was $217,000 per household across the U.S. to sell. Now, it took us 2 years of a dip to get down during the crash during 08, and that brought us down an average of 20% across the board, down to an average price of $172,000. Now, I know that doesn't seem like a big number. Heck, I know it felt a lot more catastrophic when I was going through it, and some areas did take a 50% plus hit, but some of the more affluent areas really only dropped by 5 to 10%, so it kind of averaged out, but it was only 20% overall in the entire U.S. that we adjusted from 2008 all the way until about 2011, which is when we started rebounding. Now, at the end of 2022, the beginning of 2023, the average U.S. household is $391,000. So I went in and took the total amount of debt, which was $10 trillion for 124 million households. And that came up with the average household debt of $80,645 per household was owed towards their mortgage. Now, when you divide that number into the average home price at the time, that came to a number of having a 37% loan to value. Now, today, our average US household price of $391,000 with $12 trillion in debt for household mortgages across the entire US, but we now have 142 million homes in the US because we've been building. And when you divide that out per household, we have approximately $84,500 owed per household, per mortgage. And then you divide that number into the average price and you come up with a number of 21.6% loan to value. And what that means is that each household owes percentagely way less than what we did in 2008. So in my opinion, for us to even be close to getting to be as bad as 2008, and this is where it is scary, home prices would have to drop over 40% in order to be at the same loan to value percentages, which is my indicator to say, hey, people are in trouble. They're borrowing too much on their homes, but we've improved lending standards, lending requirements, appraisals to help control the market a little bit more. Yeah, we've got inflations that has been cooking the books for the last few years, but with a healthy economy as well leading into that, it was just kind of a perfect storm of skyrocketing prices. But I still think we're in an okay financial situation considering that we're currently only at 21% loan to value on every household averagely in the United States. And so each household would have to go from $391,000 today on average down to $230,000, which is a 41% drop to be in the same loan to value situation. Now, all these billionaires out there calling about 2023 being the best year to buy and everything, I promise you, none of them want the numbers to get this bad. Either they A, haven't dug into the numbers deep enough to fully understand the situation we're in, or B, they're just selling some program course clickbaity stuff to get you to follow them more, to try to look like the expert. In fact, I don't know why everybody wants to be the end of the world predictor. I mean, Michael Burry did it once, but he's made a whole lot of other predictions that haven't even come close to being true. So if we don't know what's going to happen, I'd rather be a little bit positive about the situation we're in because none of us know. Now, last but not least, number 4 is purely based on emotional expectations, right? I just feel like too many people are prepared for any sort of big downturn, big dip, because let's face it, 2008 was not that long ago. Anybody over the age of 40 really remembers what happened in 2008, the calamity we went through. They built their lives a little bit differently. They're not as heavily in debt as we were back in 2008. And frankly, a lot of people are ready to scoop up stocks, to scoop up real estate, and anything else that they find of value collectible wise if we do take a major turn. And if there's one thing I know, when enough people are prepared for a crash to happen, it's just not going to get there. Now, in the beginning, I did say I do think there's one scenario that could really throw a wrench in all of my thinking. What we've seen in the last few years is that big institutional buyers have made up 18% of all home purchases across the United States. That is a huge number. And what are we down in sales over the last couple of years? We're down about 30 to 40% in sales. Well, institutional buyers have stopped buying. Zillow, the iBuyer programs, Redfin have gone out of business. Open Door is on the brink of bankruptcy. And so we've lost that huge chunk of institutional buyers, which helped accelerate the market going up. Now, that means we've lost about 15 to 20% of traditional buyers, but interest rates have doubled. And so we've essentially kicked out the bottom tier of buyers across the entire market. Now, these big institutional buyers, they don't borrow money like you or I do. They borrow different money, can be at cheaper rates, but they tend to borrow on an adjustable rate mortgage. Now, on most adjustable rate mortgages, there's a 6-month trigger, meaning if rates start to go up today, they won't feel that effect for an additional 6 months. So interest rates really started ticking up in April to May, got decently high in the summer at around 6%. Then we dipped a little bit. And then the middle of October, we really peaked out at about 7%. So the scenario I'm really looking for is what supply and demand is going to do over the next 6 months. So it's the beginning of January right now. Historically, the middle of February is the lowest amount of inventory year over year for the entire country. Now, after that, inventory starts increasing and virtually doubles by the time the beginning of June comes around. Well, Interest rates got so high in October, these adjustable rate mortgages that these large institutional buyers might be using, they really might start feeling a lot of pain come April and May. So they look at houses and investments a lot different than you or I are going to. They've got billions and billions of dollars that they work with. And if they feel the need to rebalance their portfolios of how many properties they own, and all of a sudden we have tens of thousands of new units coming onto the market, but we remain slower in the amount of closed listings, then I think our supply and demand issue is going to shift fairly heavily. So I'm watching the next handful of months here really close, and this is going to be my best indicator on what is going to go on with the market. Now, if interest rates do drop, I actually think this spring we might see a multiple offer scenario again in most markets throughout the country. But if we do start to see those institutional buyers start to unload their rental portfolios and inventory doubles and triples and closings remain low, then I think we're in for an additional downturn. But from the peak right now in April, we're down about 10%, at least here in the specific Denver market, which I know best. But year over year, we're still up. So we've got a long ways to go if we do end up seeing the correction. Now, during this market shift, we're having to be a lot more creative with how we're helping our clients to get the most amount of money for their house when it is time to sell. So I'm going to invite you to watch the video that's going to come up here to see how we're getting our clients as much as possible for their house, even during a slowing market. And thank you once again. And until the next time, happy housing.